Everybody, Al Pugliese Trains with two legends in the hobby, Tom Kavicek from Tom's Trains and Things, and Howard Zane. Both you guys are legends as far as I'm concerned.
As far as you're concerned, it's good. That's
And
where it stops.
we've always talked about, Howard and I have talked about this 1,000 times, having a discussion. And this is going to be the first of just discussions. And I'm just going to ask you guys some questions since you've been at it longer than I have, and you're way wiser than I am. The first question I'm going to ask, and I'll let Tom answer it first, and then Howard, you can chime in and we can bounce back and forth, is what do you think the greatest challenge of the hobby is right now? In other words, not so much is the hobby dead or is the hobby alive, but what do you think the biggest challenge is for the hobby?
I think the biggest challenge is the new technology. There's a lot of things that are out right now that the hobby is way behind in.
Okay.
They're concentrating on certain things like in DCC and the sound decoders and everything, but there's a lot to be discovered in like the automation of it.
Okay.
The people with DCC EX is getting into the automation of it. They make it really easy, but the other manufacturers are not doing anything in it.
And a lot of people have said for years, you go to places like the Choo Choo Barn or Roadside America, and these things were built back in the 50s and 60s and early 70s, and had all this automation, all this really cool automation. But fast forward 50 years later, and we're still way behind in seeing figures working and moving and cars driving down the road.
Nobody wants to take the time to do it. I mean, everybody wants instant gratification.
Okay.
And they just don't take the time to, get their hands dirty,
Right.
get their fingers in there and working on things.
And I see Howard, we've talked about this a million times. Howard, chime in on that.
The biggest challenge of the hobby, I guess, is fear. People are afraid they don't know their own capabilities. And there are a lot of people that are just, when you see something really good, you have two choices, and both words begin with I. You can choose intimidation, or you can choose inspiration.
Right.
And a lot of people don't understand that they don't really know what they can do. Now, I've had many people I've worked with that, like Andre is a good example.
Right.
And he never built a box car in his life. And the stuff he built with the hoses in the right place and the underbody detail, it's just fabulous.
Right.
Because he found out what he could do.
Yep.
There are many, many challenges. What Tom said is completely right. The technology is a challenge. Learning new stuff. No, I'm a dinosaur, or actually a stegosaurus. I like that. John Allen had a stegosaurus. I think it was number 5, a work
Yeah, Stegosaurus on the land.
Cars around there, so that's my.
Wow.
I'm not into this. I have high-tech stuff on my layout. It's Digitrax, and before that it was. It was Digitrax. It's Dynatrol now. No, what is it?
No, it was Dynatrol first.
No, Dynatrol. No, so it was standard two cab first.
Okay, right.
Then Dynatrol.
Then
Digitrax.
Then Digitrax.
And then NCE, which
Right.
I have now. Now, I was actually happier with before I got into carrier control. I mean, it's wonderful, but it's not me.
Right.
But then again, that's me.
Right. And I remember coming over here as a teenager, I was blown away with Dynatrol. Remember Dynatrol, Tom?
Yeah.
And I watched the locomotive melt. I was here at night. The metal wheels, I think it was a 260 or something. It stalled in front of me, and in my horror, I watched the drivers melt.
Yeah, well, I was too busy cursing, so I didn't see it.
Yeah, and but that was crazy. And then the fear of DCC. I still have people today coming up to me and telling me that they haven't gotten into DCC yet because, they were terrified. Oh, they're going to burn the house down. Oh, it's hard. And it's really not that hard, Tom.
I think a lot of people don't want to take the initial cost, the DCC controllers.
Right.
Because you're looking at $500 right there.
Right.
But the people with DCC EX came out with a very inexpensive way of doing it for under $100.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you could build it with our Arduino Uno or Arduino Mega.
Wow.
And a couple of other components, and for under $100, you have a DCC system that will do everything the Digitrax, ANCE, everything else will do.
Well, Howard, what do you think of dead rail
Dead rail is by far the future of this hobby, with no doubt about it. What dead rail is, if you folks don't know, is actually everything is powered by batteries. You can have a receiver like Dynatrol or Digitrax or something like that, or any kind of carrier control, but the trains run on batteries, so there's no wiring to the track. There are so many people, and I go back to intimidation, that are intimidated with the wiring.
Right.
I can remember as you walk downstairs, you have that little cabinet where you have the lights of the track plan, and there were two guys coming down there. They came down to visit the layout. They were not model railroaders, but they were wannabes. They were wannabes. I'll tell you why. They were. They said, "Jesus, really is it? Tell me about wiring the stuff." I said, "Well, it's just simple. It's just two wires basically to the track." And the guy says, "What's in this cabinet?" So I opened the cabinet. They knocked each other over trying to get up the stairs and never saw them again.
Yeah.
They were scared.
Yeah, and I have a friend, Tom. He's a young guy. Grew up with my son. His name is Nick Bogarino, and he's a pioneer and he's a genius. He's a young guy. He's in his late 20s, and he's been messing with dead rail and O scale for years. And he claims to have brass. What's the West Side B&O that had the auxiliary tender, Howard?
A lot of them had it, but the
Q4B.
The Q4s were famous.
Right.
The Q4s actually.
Well, he has a Q4B West Side with an auxiliary tender, and he's got that dead railed in HO. And he says it can pull 35 cars for 3.5 hours, and he still doesn't recharge it. He's got the bugs out of it, and we're going to more deeply explore dead rail as I begin to build my 2-rail HO layout. What do you know about dead rail, Tom? What?
Not too much. It's just basically remote control.
Right.
Yeah.
It's been done with the larger scales.
Right.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of G scale and garden railroads.
Yeah.
Right.
The live steamers are using it also. The live steamer G rails.
Oh, I didn't know that.
G scales.
Wow.
Yeah. You see these guys, playing around with their steam locomotives, trying to get it, and they're falling around all the way around the track. And then the guy with the remote control over there, he's just over there with the remote control and just watching it go around.
Well, also, even with today's battery technology, it could be done. Because recharging is very simple. You can run your choo-choos, play, and have a good time.
Yeah.
Then at the end of the day, just back the locomotive onto a charging track and let it charge. That's simple.
There's a guy, Tom, we can't get to his layout yet because he doesn't really want it on YouTube. He's a wonderful craftsman, O-scale modeler. And he has a huge layout. It's not quite as big as Howard's, but it's big.
Who's that, Vaughn?
No, I'd rather not mention who he is, but he's all dead rail. And it's been, he uses North Coast. And evidently, this new dead rail, Tsunami, has a Blue Nami. It's a chip you put in, and it's a dead rail sound chip, just like we all use. And then you can use your cell phone instead of a throttle. So you get the app for it, and you've got a control like North Coast would have in your cell phone, and you've got this Blue Nami chip, and it's a dead rail chip. So it's exciting to me.
Yeah, we met a guy at the Jacksonville train show. He was showing us he has a Lionel, and he was running it with an app.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But so you guys are really legends. So let's talk about younger people getting into it. Tom, what do you think about you seen a lot of younger people? It's not as dismal as they say.
In Florida, there's a lot of younger people at the train shows.
Really? In Florida?
I don't think there are any young people in Florida.
Yeah, there are. Yeah, most of them, most of them are retired. But,
I think the average age.
But there's a lot of kids at the train shows.
Yeah. The average age
the ones
in
that we
Florida
go in D-Land, there's a group there, and they have a bunch of kids,
really
in high school and
grade
kids. School and even in college. I know a guy, he just got his doctorate degree. Toggle, he's got a YouTube channel.
Wow.
I don't know if you know him, Tolga Ibora.
Toga Ibora, no.
Yeah. He just got his doctor's degree.
Wow.
But he's into model railroading.
Right.
Big time.
Yeah, the hobby's not dead. The hobby's...
No. You've been hearing that for years.
Yeah, that's total nonsense.
How it changes. But
it's changing all the time.
All the time.
That's all.
Right.
It's not dead.
Right.
No, you mentioned challenges. One of the challenges is a lot of people want to get in the hobby, but they're just starting out, so they're not financially stabilized actually.
Right.
So one of the challenges to teach these people or let them know that you can model in any class or any budget.
Right.
There's something for everybody.
Right.
And that's why scratch building is good because you don't. And a structure kit is $400. If you scratch build a thing, you're going to spend $100 and $200 in materials, maybe more. Depends on what scale. But it's so much better and easier. But we have to get this known, and it's not happening.
Right.
It could be. These video things are great for young people to watch. Hey, I can get in the hobby. I got $300. Looks like I can get into model railroading. It's possible, maybe even less.
And especially like what you were saying, Tom, with a Arduino or whatever. I've never heard of it, but you can get in a DCC system now for a couple $100.
Yeah, for $100.
For $100, you can get into a DCC system. Yeah, that's another weird thing that Howard and I talk about all the time is a lot of the young people, they never got exposed to steam.
Yeah.
And that's why you see a lot of young people that are fascinated with the modern diesels because that's what they know. And you can't knock it for that.
Yeah.
You know?
There are tremendous influx of historic modelers.
Okay.
Young people that are modeling, let's say, Detroit to Albany, whatever. That's a short trip in 1942, and they're not going to find. It's actually what it's just they just pick a period.
Right.
One example is a fellow in York. I can't think of his name. He's a picture of him in my book.
Yeah, I met him at the train show. Mike somebody.
And he's modeling exactly that New York Central during the early 40s. His parents weren't even born during that period. But that's what he's doing. There's several other people. I've seen Civil War modelers that are, there's a fellow right here in Maryland who's very famous for that.
Yep.
Civil War modeling.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun. If I could start over again, I would pick a period, and I'm definitely a historical type, probably from 1890 to 1920.
Oh, wow.
That's just pushing the golden age of model railroading.
And then there's also steampunk. I don't know if either one of you guys know what steampunk is.
Yeah.
Steampunk is taking steam engines and making them into like Star Wars things. Yeah. And I've seen people do that. That it's just, the sky's the limit. And I guess we could talk about this for 2 or 3 hours, and I'm actually, we're going to cut it a little short, but we'll have other segments of this with other guests. And Howard and Tom happen to be my first victims. So... So we're going to be having a lot more of this, and Howard too, because I'm graciously allowed to come to Howard's house. We're going to continue this with Andre and
we also have your series
Alex.
called The Day in the Shop.
Yep.
And Andre runs, which I think is great.
Yep.
Andre is my one of my other disciples, and he, like Al, is more into the structures. I'm teaching Andre about brass.
Yeah.
And he's picked up a nice little collection of brass, and he understands it quite well.
Yes. And then I guess we could go on and on and on, but I guess we're ending this with one of the biggest things, and the reason I came up with this question is I'm looking at these beautiful high rail scale trains behind you that Howard has. That is a huge, huge part of the hobby. Mm-hmm. And for years, a lot of people have, that's just toy trains. But now, all of a sudden, there's an enormous group of young... Remember, Tom, you went to York, I think. Was that the first time you ever went to York?
2 years ago, yeah.
And what did you think of that?
That was amazing.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe how many people were up there.
Right. And high rail has gone berserk with younger people. I know so many people in their 30s and 40s and 50s that are getting into the high rail trains. What do you think about it, Howard? You agree?
Well, it's not scale model railroading as I know it, but then again, there are a lot of high railers that are crossing the border,
right,
doing beautiful stuff.
Right.
I've seen photographs of. Can I mention names?
Yeah.
This fellow Norm Sharper.
Oh
yeah,
I do not know.
His work is magnificent.
Oh, his work is
magnificent.
There's
another Norm Pullen, I think is his name. He owns he's a brass dealer at all gauges, but his layout is high rail, and it's beautifully done.
Yeah.
My father's layout was, there's people say that one person has invented this weathering technique with ink and alcohol.
Right.
Hell's bells, my father was doing that back in the 40s with Winsor and Newton colored inks.
Oh, wow.
And it was beautiful. He got all kinds of effects. Mostly he used ochres and browns and blacks. and but it turned out quite nice.
And a lot of the structures Howard and I have been building, a vast majority of them have been for high rail scale guys that they have the high rail layouts, but they want a scale, O scale, true O scale appearance with the structures and the scenery.
Well, these layouts, these buildings here, the 26 buildings we're sending out to California.
Yeah.
He's a high railer.
Yeah. Yeah, and he wants scale.
He wants scale.
Wants scale realism. Well, you guys, again, thanks so much for this. And, well, I thought we were going to get some dramatic music there. But guys, thanks for taking the time, Tom and Howard. And I appreciate you being my first victims for the interview. Thanks, guys.
No problem.
You're quite welcome.